Welcome to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast where you will discover creative ways to improve your health and well-being. Someone may have told you that art isn't for you, but they were wrong. Anyone can create arts for the health of it. No talent or experience necessary.
I'm just a little songbird, try to fly my way homeward with the melody, and I make the beat. Don't know where it'll take me, cause when I'm in the dark of night, I sing my way back to the light. Come along with me and your heart will see that a song changes everything. Oh, oh, oh.
Well, we've all probably heard by now that our post-COVID world, we're all experiencing a level of collective trauma. And we know from research that the arts can be a powerful tool to building resiliency while people are going through trauma and then trying to recover from trauma. And I'm so excited about our guest today, Curtis Romjue from First Aid Arts. I've been a fan of their work for a long time, and he shares. They work with populations from children trying to coming out of sex trafficking to refugees. And then they even have a toolkit now for those of us, which is everyone, being affected by COVID-19 to use the arts to shift our perspective and either activate or calm down, just depending on what we need in the moment. And it just was so cool, Richard.
I'm always fascinated. Like, I didn't even know, I'd never heard arts and health before the day I met you. And which was not that long ago, it was like 3 years ago. So I'm always super fascinated by people who have been doing the work for so long and who are so like in tune to it, you know? And I think one of the things he talked about was, and I think about a lot, is listening to music. You can do that so passively, like, and not even realize really what you're getting out of just turning on your favorite music or a music to put, you know, like a mood playlist. Like, you don't even realize what that's actually doing to you. You just kind of know, like, I love this song, so I'm going to listen to it. But how you connect with something and what it actually can change, and that happens to me all the time. I have different CDs, records, because I'm old. You know, like, I'll listen to this when I'm in this kind of mood, and I listen to that if I'm in that kind of mood, or I want to be in a certain kind of mood. And I never realized that's even what I was doing for myself until 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think humans have naturally used the arts to create psychological and social equilibrium. And I love the intentionality that First Aid Arts brings to arts engagement, combining mindfulness around trauma responses that we have, and then how to use these tools that we have in the arts in a very strategic and targeted way to build resiliency and shift mood and help us feel happier and calmer and all of that. So yeah, this is a great interview. And he shares one of the activities, one of the trauma-informed activities at the end of this episode. So make sure you listen all the way through to the end. You actually don't need any materials for this one. If you want to use a pen or a marker or something, you can. But we just did it by tracing on our hand. So yeah, so even if you're just out and about, you can do this little mood shifting art activity with us.
And I think it's a great example of how you don't need a lot of time and a lot of supplies to do something and to be able to change that way. You don't need a ton of art supplies, and you don't need to sit down for an hour and meditate. Like, it took us 2 minutes and fingers. So
yep.
Not a lot of supplies needed for this one, everyone. But I want to introduce you to Curtis. He's the co-founder and president of First Aid Arts, which is a nonprofit based in Seattle, Washington, that is in its 12th year, 12 years ago. First Aid Arts' mission is to equip trauma care providers with arts-based tools and training for a world where wounded hearts heal beautifully. He is a professional musician, a surfer, a sailor, a husband, a father, and his motto is do what you love to fight what you hate. And when I read that, I was like, oh, It's like it's like that updated version of what is it, like, do what you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life or whatever that is. And I was like, oh, like that's everybody's goal, really, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully, is to do what they love.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway,
good.
that's the interview. Well, that's not the interview. Here's the interview. Take a listen, take a watch.
Yep. Always more to learn. Always room for improvement.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
So you're the co-founder and president of First Aid Arts. And the first thing that always comes in my head with people who have been doing it a long time is, you know, arts and health is not an everyday phrase in people's lives. So I'm always curious, like, what prompted you to get into the work? Like, what happened where you found what arts and health was and why it was important, and what it was like trying to start something like that? Because I'm sure it was more than 12 years ago that you started to actually do the work.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I mean, it's fun. It is fun to think back before you were trying to sell anything or curate your public profile, like when you're just a kid and, you know, what your parents tell you about yourself before you were self-conscious. And I grew up in really beautiful parts of the world, in Hawaii and in the Pacific Northwest and the San Juan Islands. And my mom says I was always the kid that was pointing out rainbows and just celebrating beauty from a young age, and then got really into music. Like my brother, who's 4.5 years older, he got me breakdancing to Michael Jackson on refrigerator boxes with the bandana tied around the leg. And,
oh, no.
I wish I knew that, because I would have asked for video of it. So
I don't think that exists, only in our hearts and minds. But but so yeah, just so music always just got deep into me and really brought me to life. And then just over time, you know, I did experience how, and I think we all have this, before you have like the scientific examined understanding of the brain and the body and mental health and that whole conversation, we all have experiential reference points of times where, for instance, if you're just feeling low and like you want to, and you're trying to work out, like you put on music to pump you up. I mean, that's a way to use, you know, music to not just for pleasure, but as a tool to help energize you, to help you engage your body. I've, you know, have been a professional musician for a lot of my life and played at lots and lots of weddings, because that's how you can eat if you're an artist, is if you can get in on certain industries. And I loved, you know, the honor of participating in people's, you know, big day and that sacred moment. But I saw how music in that moment, you know, just everything that's going on as soon as we'd play the song where the bride would march down the aisle, just like how that could shift the, you know, the entire atmosphere. And how afterwards I had so many fathers of the bride tell me, you know, I was doing fine until you started playing that song, and then I started weeping, you know, and, you know, you jerk, why'd you do that to me? So yeah, so I mean, I think we all can think back to it being just a very universal human experience of how the arts connect with how we're feeling, our experience of life. And for me, just processing, it became a way for me to do the most thorough journaling, kind of sifting for gold of what's true, what's good, what's beautiful, what's worthy of taking with me, of thinking about, and going through. I like to say too that, you know, if you've been through middle school, like we've all experienced some trauma and some stress during that time period. And for me, connecting with Nirvana and other bands that just expressed just the displeasure and angst and just friction of life in ways that I didn't have vocabulary for, but like I just was like, yeah, like what they're expressing, I feel that, like, and so that's where it started, I would say. And then in terms of like, you know, catching up on just First Aid Arts and a nonprofit using the arts for healing and for resilience. That a couple stepping stones for that were, you know, besides all my childhood experiences, were then in college when I finally got to pick all my courses, you know, who am I? What should I be doing here? Something that became a motto of mine to help me navigate was the motto, do what you love to fight what you hate.
Mm.
And for me, sustainability was becoming, I graduated in 2003, and just, sustainability in terms of the environment. I was thinking also in terms of sustainability, in terms of just what you spend your time doing. How can you thrive as a person? What does a sustainable vocation or calling or job look like? And I came up with that motto that for doing good in the world, that if you can figure out a way to do what brings your heart to life, and connect that to something that breaks your heart, that would be a very sustainable way to engage in this life. And so for me, that became what I call a fertile question. Like, how can you do what you love to fight what you hate? And for me, the thing that I loved was music and the arts. That brought my heart to life. And then the thing that I found out about that broke my heart was learning about modern day slavery. And I heard the president of the largest anti-trafficking, anti-slavery organization in the world, Gary Haugen of International Justice Mission. I heard him speak, and he shared about how he had personally been involved in rescuing kids as young as 4 years old from sex trafficking. And my life was different hearing that you can't unhear that. And so that to me became, the cause that I knew I would always be passionate about, is how can I help kids get out of slavery and help them heal? And so that fertile question for me became, how can I use music and art, the thing that I love, that the resonant frequency of my heart, that my heart sings like a wine glass, that sings when I really resonate with music and art. And then just like you can put a speaker next to a wine glass and it'll shatter, like my heart shattered when I heard about kids in slavery. So the fertile question was, how can I use the arts and music to help kids come out of slavery? And that was what launched my ship. And a bunch of good questions and good people later came up, with a project that looked at using music and the arts to help survivors of modern day slavery in their healing process. And then we found that what we'd built could also be of service to refugees, to a variety of other people that have experienced trauma. So that was the origins. Just a good question.
Wow.
And just taking it step by step.
Oh, that's an incredible story. I love that question. How do you take what you love to fight what you hate? I love that so much. It's so good. As I resonate with that as a fellow nonprofit founder, it's how do you combine your passions to help solve some of the world's problems? I would love to hear more about the different populations that have been impacted by your work, and maybe even a little bit about how you develop your programs for different populations. Is it the same for each one? Are there different tweaks that you make to a central curriculum or model? I just would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Stanzi. That's so we started off with supporting International Justice Mission and other groups that were helping survivors of slavery. And then we did, a lit review and had our advisory council come together with a bunch of professionals in mental health, and art therapists, music therapists, dance therapists, drama therapists. And basically I kind of ended up with all right, here's our first aid kit. Here's this box. Like if you could put something in this and we could, train and bring some materials to human trafficking survivors, what do we need to know? That was the first aid arts, the name implies the model, which is that just like there's never going to be enough doctors or hospitals for all of the medical needs of folks that are coming out of natural disasters or warfare or other types of physical trauma. Well, below the surface, part of our humanity, the iceberg, the unseen wounds of the heart and the mind, we likewise will never have enough professional mental health counselors or people with letters behind their name. The letters behind the name of the people that we serve are LOVE, and they are serving in their own culture and their own language. And so with that first aid model, we basically had we're just trying to be really practical. So how can we be safe and effective? What's the scope? What should we not be doing? We don't want to do any harm. And just thinking about medical first aid, you don't put, a scalpel in there and have people do brain surgery. Like, you have disinfectants and bandages and things that actually come alongside the natural resiliencies of the body. And it's really cool to learn about how, even our fight, flight, freeze reflexes, those are there to protect us when we experience traumatic moments. But then, you can help the body to heal more quickly. And you can also help the heart and the mind by learning to regulate. And so, and being intentional in the way that you intervene post-trauma, and learn to notice when you are in that fight, flight, freeze mode. So, a really, really super quick version of kind of what we put together in terms of our secret sauce and our approach is that first aid model, and the three core objectives that really all of our research and advisors came to was that for survivors of trauma, if you can help them to be more self-aware, so you can recognize when you're in that triggered state of fight, flight, freeze, that's kind of knowing, and knowing is half the battle. If you can learn to recognize, then you can respond intentionally instead of just reacting, because our bodies react, and we all have our own, for good or for bad, our habits of our style under stress, like that we learned from our parents or our childhood, or just ways of coping and getting through hard things. And we're grateful for those responses, but you can, by recognizing when you're feeling stressed, then you can go to the second objective, which is to regulate. So self-awareness then gives you the opportunity to self-regulate. Like, for example, breathing exercises that, can instantly help you calm down and bring your full brain back online, so that you can bring your best self to the challenges and opportunities of the moment. So the three objectives are self-awareness, self-regulation, and then interpersonal skills, that just connecting well, learning to communicate, and have proper attachment and relational boundaries and habits. That is the key, another key element of recovering from stress and trauma, and then also having resiliency moving forward. So it was great. I mean, I was a musician that studied philosophy and Latin American studies, Spanish, and then I was the one that was naive enough to kind of just enter this and just ask a bunch of questions and bring a bunch of experts together and build that kind of first aid model. And then, we've been at it for this is our 12th year, and at this point, I think we've trained about 800 staff and volunteers from over 250 organizations that are working in 56 countries. And we're based here in Seattle, and we do some work here, and we train domestically as well.
I think I hear that a lot from people who start nonprofits. I think a word they use a lot is naive. Like, how hard can it be to save the world? It can't be that difficult.
Yeah.
Let me do that.
I'm curious about how you feel like your music background served you as a nonprofit founder and as a leader now.
Yeah, I mean, this is something the arts, I think, they're working the muscle of the imagination, and leadership is often, primarily about seeing a vision and then helping people get excited about seeing that too, and then moving towards it. It unifies you, and it gives people the reason to do anything. If you can see, keep your eyes on the prize kind of thing. So the imagination, and seeing that with trauma recovery as well, that for people that can't imagine a better life, when everybody when people have not provided good role models, or when they've been given an inaccurate view of their own worth and their own potential, that just learning to believe and see something good in the future for yourself is primary. And so I think that learning, engaging in the arts as a kid, and being grateful for a lot of opportunities that I was provided to explore various art forms. And I like to point this out too. I always love to give a shout out to Hawaii, because just growing up in a couple different cultures there, I just, every culture has it's things you celebrate and other things that you're not as stoked about. But in Hawaii, just the freedom to, go surfing, paddle in, and then people are all eating food and playing music is just part of life, versus being in the Northwest, where sometimes it felt like there's more of a piano recital vibe to the arts, or that it's more performative and kind of evaluated. And both of those are actually helpful, because you want to be free and loose and just get to run and explore. I like to think of art oftentimes as kind of, like picking a bouquet, just running around a field, and like, in music, putting together chords and rhythms that provide a bouquet that you dig, that you're into. That is very good. But then also the excellence and the seriousness with which you want to be excellent in what you are doing, those are both valuable. So I'm grateful for the two cultures I grew up in that kind of offered, the warmer and the colder climate approach to life a little bit. Yeah, that's I think, in terms of being an entrepreneur, in terms of starting this organization, I think the arts are helpful for that, whether it would be an arts organization or not. I think just the working the muscle of the imagination is something that is critical to leadership and critical to just staying motivated.
What have you learned over the last 12 years? I mean, I'm sure that list could be hours long, but I'm curious, like from the beginning to now, like how this has all kind of evolved.
I might tie that initially back to just that concept of the naivety, where it's like that is a gift, and I think to some degree, yeah, we're all trying to be childlike but not childish, where you don't want to lose that sense of like, yeah, why not? Why not just do this? Like, it's not that hard. It's not that complicated. Like, I think that our language, I heard somebody was talking about their son had graduated from Yale, like top law school in the United States, for the past 20 or 30 years or whatever, and how he was just really saddened or disturbed with how, like, in one of the classes, they were literally teaching those students to complexify their language in order to basically posture, and that it was a strategic move to, like, if you can sound smarter than other people and leave them in the dust behind you, that is advantageous in terms of gaining power and just being successful. And I hate that. I actually want the exact opposite to happen. I think that simplifying things down is really what we're trying to do in our project, which is taking complex, because that's the thing, you can put under a microscope what's going on in terms of understanding the brain and understanding, the nervous system and hormonal responses and things. But at the end of the day, you're trying to just have people live healthier, happier lives, and you want things to be understandable. And I love the quotes of, I think there's one by Einstein or attributed to him, just around, that if you truly understand something when you can explain it simply.
Mm-hmm.
And that so in terms of lessons learned over the last 12 years, I'm constantly trying to just simplify the way that we share things that are true and things that are helpful to people. And I love that my non-professional background, I mean, I've got like a degree from Life University, and I think what I've learned, I didn't take professional management courses. I don't have an MBA. I don't have a master's, in counseling, but I have real world experience, and I've listened and read and been careful. So I've kind of, some unofficial education in these things, but really, to me, the most important compliments I've gotten is from people that have their PhDs and have their, credentials that say what we teach is actually clearer than what they learned in their formal education.
Wow.
That to me is success. And that's what I'm trying to keep learning, is how do you, how do you simplify versus complexify, and how do you make things actually usable and to really help people. Yeah.
I'd love to hear about some examples of types of activities or arts engagement that you're training people to lead others through, and some of the impact that those things make.
Absolutely. So our, again, kind of that first aid model is that we are training people our approach is we have a responder training. The responder training is learning the basics of our framework, which is kind of the holistic impact of trauma and stress. A lot of people, some people don't identify as a trauma survivor, but we all, toxic stress. There's a continuum of how extreme something impacts you. But so we may not identify as trauma survivors, but every single one of us has been through toxic stress and things that are traumatic in some degree. And so our, response to that in a first aid model is to first orient people to what's happening when you experience that, learning to recognize it. Again, that self-awareness. If you can learn to recognize when your heart rate is up, maybe you're sweating, you're having trouble focusing, you have high energy, but it's unpleasant. That's on the high end of the spectrum. If you're kind of taking your temperature, that's like the red orange at the top from a 1 to 10 scale. We have something we use called the window of tolerance. And in the middle of that, is the green zone where your full brain's online. You don't feel threatened. You can bring, again, your best, your full faculties to the moment. But then also below that is when people are, kind of running cold, where just low energy, that's unpleasant and, difficult being motivated. You're kind of just that checked out or just like not engaging. So teaching people, first of all, just to be self-aware and to check in on that scale and take your temperature. Because then if you can learn to recognize when you're in the zone, great. What are some things you can do to stay there? Or if you're, running hot, what are some things that you can do to bring yourself into that window of tolerance down into the green? Or if you're in the blue, what can you do to boost yourself up? And that's where learning to kind of teach that framework and then having specific activities. That's where the arts, the two things is kind of learning how stress and trauma impacts our system, and then kind of, then why the arts? What is it that the shape of the need, and then the solution? Like how do those puzzle pieces fit together? And when you learn about how our bodies respond to stress and trauma, and then when you learn to recognize if you're running hot or cold, that's when you can then intervene in kind of a first aid way, where just choosing activities where you can, again, like something very basic, and where I love just teaching people to start thinking of the arts as not just pleasurable or a luxury, but as a tool, is thinking about your phone and thinking about having a playlist of songs that before you're in the moment, before you are under stress or trauma, like, you can like pack yourself a little, first aid kit for your mental and emotional health by having a playlist of songs that resonate with you, that can help you chill out. Like for me, there's some beautiful slack key Hawaiian guitar playing that just helps me breathe and bring it down. Or again, back to the kid dancing on the refrigerator boxes. Like I know, like the Rocky IV soundtrack, like will get me pumped up, But so things like that, and actually, one of the links I think I'd shared with you guys was that if on our website, the firstaidarts.org, you can learn more about the kind of tools and programs we offer. And then we have a free resource, which I would love for everybody to take advantage of. That's at firstaidarts.org. And it's /COVID-19. And on that page, we have a mini toolkit, which shares some of this content that I've been talking about in terms of the window of tolerance and checking in. And then it has these individual activities. And so leaning into music in some intentional ways. There's something called the breath flower, which, without a piece of paper, even I can just show you that, on the palm of your hand, you're intentionally breathe and you just center around the center of the flower. And then the point of it is to connect your breath with the motion of your, either your finger on your hand right now, or if you had art supplies that you could take, your pen, and you draw the petal of the flower and you inhale to the outside edge of the petal and you hold your breath for 3 counts. And then you exhale, letting go as you bring the pen to the center of the flower. And then you do that again, inhaling and pausing, and then exhaling as you bring the pen to the center of the flower. And you can do that and pay attention to, to your breath and draw the whole flower. And just drawing one flower can be enough time and intentional breathing and focusing your mind instead of on all the distractions and the white noise. You zero in, you look at the pigment of that beautiful color and the texture and the tactile feel of holding that, and just that, all of that is touching different parts of your brain. So you're not just scrolling on a screen or doing things. You're actually engaging the senses, which are engaging different parts of the brain, which strategically help you to regulate your physiology. And so the breath flower is one simple tool that at any point you can draw on to help you to be mindful of your breathing, to regulate, to come back to center. So it's basic things like that are have been advised by folks that have a lot of, again, they have the complex rationale and science that backs up what we're doing, but kids can do this stuff without knowing why it's effective. They can experience how it's effective. And I've got 2 daughters, and I've loved how I can do these activities with them. I do them myself. And the arts are part of every culture on the planet. They cross age groups, so from kids to grandparents. And whatever the style you resonate with, it's still engaging your brain and your body in strategic ways. And so I just find that to be beautifully universal. And again, we're trying to simplify and just make these tools available to people. And that toolkit, that mini toolkit, is available on our website for free. And that's something that we launched to just share during COVID, especially, where we're saying, hey, we're designed for this as an organization, and it's awesome to just make that available to people.
And I've downloaded the toolkit and I love it. I think it's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on, is because I thought that was just a fantastic resource that your organization is just freely providing, because we all are experiencing collective trauma right now. It's maybe not a lot of times we think of trauma as, and maybe you can speak more to this, about different types of trauma, right? So there's trauma that happens suddenly, where you're in a car accident, or someone dies, or something intense, kind of acute trauma. But then there's chronic trauma, where we're go through a chronic period of time, a longer period of time, without some of the basic things that we need. And so I love that you have that resource available. It's a really good one.
COVID's kind of been both of those things. It's one day the world shut down, and then nothing's happened since then. How you said before that you were sort of that First Aid Arts was sort of built for things like COVID. So how have you pivoted in the last year to as an organization, and what have you done? Obviously the toolkit, but what has First Aid Arts done to kind of react to that?
Yeah, we had our last in-person training in March a year ago, and we were grateful that we were able to provide that training. And then right after that, we had to practice what we preach and get creative and use our imaginations to solve the problem. And we started. Just like a lot of organizations, we pivoted to digital in terms of how we could disseminate information. We're working on, recording our material and putting versions of our trainings online, and doing kind of a hybrid of recorded and live material, which I'm excited about. I'm sure this is kind of the Corona lemonade that a lot of nonprofits have had to make. But we are excited that some back burner ideas, got brought to the front burner. So we're working on all that in terms of how we can reach people digitally. But we put together some kits, and we prioritize seniors and as well as hospitals, and sent in some of our printed materials and art supplies, and postcards with messages like "Take care of yourself as you care for others, and you make the world more beautiful," and things that are postcards that we have that you can color in and enjoy the benefit of intentionally engaging the arts while thinking of someone you love, and sending them a note of encouragement, so that you can have that interpersonal connection, even if you can't be face to face, you can send them your handmade art, which is really meaningful. So yeah, we kept things moving, got creative, and are excited to be able to offer in-person trainings in time. But it was really meaningful too. I mean, one story that just really is important to me is just my mom had Alzheimer's the last 5 years of her life before she went to heaven, and I got to train the staff at her live-in care facility in the arts and how to use those with their residents, and to give art kits to the families, because a lot of the the men and women that worked there had kids that were going through COVID too. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. Jeff, I feel like we need to stop there. That was really good. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great way to end this entire thing. Sanzi, do you have any other questions?
No, I just want to, for people to know how to follow you, and where can they follow First Aid Arts, and all of that if they want to find more information.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love for people to go to our website. That's a great launching point to learn more about what we're up to, what we offer. And again, more offerings will come online as we are able to have in-person events again, but we do have some digital resources now. And so firstaidarts.org is our website. And then all of our social handles are just #FirstAidArts. So we'd love to be connected.
Awesome. So go follow them. They're awesome.
Yes. And everything, all the show notes will be at heartsneedart.org. Just click on the podcast link and we'll get all of Curtis's information for that. Thank you very much for being here.
Stanzi, Richard, my pleasure. Thank you. And thanks to everybody listening for doing what you love to fight what you hate. Love creatively.
We might steal that for the title of this interview. Just telling you now. Make sure you subscribe wherever you watch or listen to the podcast. We will see you, or you'll hear us next week, everyone. Until then, keep creating. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast produced by Hearts Need Art, creative support for patients and caregivers, in partnership with the National Organization for Arts and Health. You can help others learn about the healing power of the arts by subscribing, sharing, and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen or watch. The podcast is hosted by Richard Wilmore, co-hosted by Constanza Rader, and produced by Ivan Briones. Our theme song, Songbird, is written and performed by Natalie Lane. Visit heartsneedart.org to learn how you can support our mission to create joy with people facing life-altering health challenges. Join us next week to learn more ways you can create arts for the health of it. The views expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Hearts Need Art, their staff, board members, or other affiliates. All content is created for informational purposes only. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice or to diagnose and treat any health condition. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health professional with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.